It's been about 5 months since Halo Infinite released, and it's been 2 months since I've had even an hour of playtime in the game. I should have gotten more footage for this video, instead of reusing old footage I've used multiple times by now, but I can't do it. I just can't push myself to do it. I don't want to use these weapons, I don't want to play on these maps, I don't want to deal with the desync. This is how my viewer retention dies. Halo Infinite needs X, Halo Infinite needs Y. You know, at this point, Infinite just needs about anything that isn't a cosmetic. Looking at the last Waypoint post about the future of Halo Infinite, and the changes that will be coming around Season 2, things do seem to be looking up, and I truly mean that. I can have the opinion that Halo Infinite is a completely mishandled game that kind of tarnishes the legacy of Halo, and that the gameplay changes that they're claiming to work on look like they're going to be making the game better overall. Look, in my opinion, Halo Infinite needs new maps and weapons more than anything else, but core gameplay fixes and balancing is a good start. I just want more variety in the sandbox, and I just want more sandboxes in general, more maps, more places to play. But I've talked about this before, so instead of harping on the lack of content, let's talk about why people are losing patience with 343, because I think some people have the misconception that just Halo fans are insufferable and can't be pleased by anything. And while that might be true to some extent on the outer edges, I think most people have a pretty justifiable mood towards Halo right now. You might think that the lack of patience started after Infinite came out, or maybe back when Halo 5 was at its lowest point. Maybe you think it has something to do with what went wrong on the MCC, but that's not it either. In my opinion, people have been upset and disenfranchised with the Halo series since Halo 4, more so when Bungie handed over the reins to 343. More accurately, when Bungie left and Microsoft formed 343 to keep the Halo wheel a-turnin'. Now, I have a lot of fond memories with Halo 4, and don't think that I'm turning this into some 343 hate session. I'm just saying, Halo hasn't been winning over and pleasing longtime fans since after 2010. Now, before you waste everybody's time and comment that you did or didn't like certain different Halo games and which one's your favorite or which one's actually good or which one's actually bad, just know that I'm speaking more in general terms because broad strokes paint the fence faster. While it's true that everyone has problems and complains about every Halo for different reasons throughout their life cycles, I think we need to look at the reality of what Halo is now instead of bringing up the obvious point that people have always had complaints and opinions. There are people that believe in the Halo cycle or the COD cycle, where the new game comes out and everybody really gets excited and then they play it for a while and they hate it and they prefer the previous game, and then the cycle just repeats over and over again. Look, I don't agree with that, because that's sort of that nutshelling argument where it's like, oh, well, Halo fans don't like Infinite, but they didn't like 5 either. And it's like, no, probably there's a lot more nuances, because we're not talking about a collective consciousness, we're talking about a bunch of different individuals with different individual tastes and opinions. So I'm not really being rude, I'm just saying don't waste everybody's time by pointing out that, well, people didn't like Reach when it was out, or people had problems with 3, but right now is what we're talking about. The weight of the franchise and its impact today is the problem. That's the topic. It doesn't matter whether or not people did or didn't like Halo 3 and Reach when they were out. That doesn't matter. What matters now is that we know for sure, regardless of how perfect the older Halo games are, Infinite is far from it, and our feedback as a community might help shape the game in small ways, so that's why we talk, that's why we chat. We don't just get a defeatist personality, say nothing's ever perfect, so stop complaining. Don't do that. It's bad. It's really annoying. It's more likely that the people that were bitching about Halo Reach 3 and 2 and CE back in the day hold them in a much higher regard now, for one reason or another, in spite of the issues they might have had in the past. The thing is, 343 Industries brought shakeup after shakeup to the series, leaving many fans feeling disappointed and forgotten. While I respect innovation as much as the next guy, I also respect when a franchise focuses on delivering the basic ebbs and flows that fans have come to expect and love from said franchise. You buy Battlefield for a Battlefield experience, Sims for a Sims experience, EA Sports games for EA Sports games experiences. You can't just call every massive shakeup to a formula innovation and that everyone that disagrees with it is stuck in the past. if I buy a franchise for a certain reason, I kind of want to see it stick to that. Instead of getting excited over the mere concept of something being innovative, how about when something is innovative within the formula? There you go. Halo 4 and 5 aside, when it came to 343 releasing a collection of the older games, it was botched hard. I mean, I swear, that Master Chief Collection launch is gonna be written about in history books one day. The MCC could be described as unplayable for a large chunk of its life, and it was left in the dust in order to make room for Halo 5. So already, your favorite franchise has a different mommy and daddy, and the gameplay keeps drastically changing, and the collection of legacy titles you grew up with that you are a fan of was apparently coded by monkeys with typewriters. So imagine how disrespected and forgotten the fans felt. The MCC was in shambles, Halo 5 was taking the spotlight, though a very dim one, seeing how that game was very far away from what makes a good or traditional Halo game, depending how you want to look at it. So there was a light at the end of that tunnel, and now we all know that the MCC is a beautiful example on how to respect the legacy of a franchise. In fact, in my opinion, out of almost any other shooter, Halo is the only one that's done right by its legacy titles. Call of Duty's gotten COD 4 remastered with shoehorned in supply drops and RNG garbage and weapons that weren't in the original game, and then we got Modern Warfare 2 Campaign remastered, and they were both just awkwardly released. You had to buy Infinite Warfare to get Modern Warfare, and I think Modern Warfare 2 Campaign Remastered is, again, only the campaign, and I think it released on PlayStation first. It just felt awkward. It wasn't like a really big moment for the fans. It was just something to pad sales. It felt kind of soulless. But before the launch of Halo Infinite, 343 did a 180 on the MCC, and it became much safer to be excited for their next mainline title. I mean, with the MCC being in the state that it was and being brought from the ashes as a relevant and interesting part of the current gaming culture somehow, I mean, surely 343 wouldn't make the same mistakes twice, right? Surely what they learned about progression and replayability and the classic Halo formulas, they would take all that knowledge and use it to make Halo Infinite amazing, right? Well, sure. You could get excited for that, because with the comeback of the MCC, 343 had finally earned back players' trust. Then we found out that mechanically, Halo Infinite is a fantastic mix. This is subjective, but to me at least, it's a fantastic mix of being innovative within the formula. It's still respecting that forgotten Halo magic, but it does feel like a new modern video game. It's just more about comboing weapons and your initial positioning. I really appreciate that. 4 and 5 dabbled in what I liked about Halo, but Infinite really nails it in so many ways. More trust was earned, and the player base that felt forgotten and misunderstood finally felt heard. And we all just sort of assumed that Microsoft and 343 had a plan for the near future of Halo Infinite, but we were clearly wrong. It feels as if they launched the game with the bare minimum required to launch the game, with nothing in the immediate pipeline. And on top of that, many of the things players loved about the MCC just weren't around in Halo Infinite. From customization to progression to a multitude of game modes and ways to play the games in general. I don't know, it just felt like for me going from the MCC to Halo Infinite, I downgraded in everything except mechanics and graphics, I guess. A franchise once known for being filled with an overwhelming amount of content at a premium $60 price was now reduced to being a free-to-play multiplayer, a lackluster full-price story, and well, that didn't go over very well. I'm making this video. Well, Halo used to be a huge social catalyst, and now it feels like a live service game. It's live service game number 804. It's lifeless. It feels unplanned. It feels like it was just put out to keep the Halo brand relevant. Even Halo games in the past that didn't release with a ton of maps or whatever, I think they had more interesting weapon sandboxes, more interesting vehicle play, and they also launched with, co-op campaign and forge modes that just I spent hours in. Infinite has no forge, no co-op, no firefight, around 10 maps, a cliffhanger ending on the campaign that seems it's just purposefully designed to sell a DLC of some kind, a horrible progression system, and it left players wondering, where's the rest of the game? Why did it come out like this? And I think the most frustrating thing is that when you look at the discourse online, you see people comparing it to something like Halo 3 or Halo Reach, not in terms of like design elements or balance, but just talking about how, well, Halo 3 wasn't perfect either. It had these bugs and glitches, it had these few maps, or, this gun had this problem, or, Halo 2 also had a weird ending. But that is so far in the past now. The fact that you see people bringing up Halo 2's campaign ending when we've gotten Halo 3 and ODST and Reach and 4 and 5 since then. We've gotten so many games. It's in the past. Halo Infinite should be better than a game from the early 2000s, don't you think? Halo Infinite shouldn't make the same mistakes almost 20 years later, don't you think? You're not doing anything by pointing out how Halo 3 and 2 weren't as perfect as people thought they were, because we already know that. We've known this for a long time. These games, Halo 3, Halo 2, CE, even Reach, they're so old now, they're emotions. They are the weight, they are the legacy, but they're not something for you to bring up the issues of to deflect the current issues in the current game. And by the way, by pointing out that older Halo games had similar issues, you are just admitting, while wasting everybody's time, that Halo Infinite has those issues. Well, those games are in the past. They're done. They've already been made. Flaws and all. Now we have to look at Halo Infinite and ask, why can't 343 learn a lesson? Why can't they learn from their own failures, and why can't they learn from Bungie's? Speaking for only myself here, I would have been fine waiting another year or so for a full-priced, fully featured Halo game, but maybe that's just me. Maybe wanting to spend $60 and getting a full suite of multiplayer maps, co-op campaign, Forge, Firefight, a, fully featured AAA game where I'm not having to, pay real money to color my Spartan red. Maybe I'm alone, but I would rather get something that's worth $60 than playing something that's free that isn't worth $10. Halo Infinite is in recovery mode right now, and the patience that was already running thin back in 2012 feels almost entirely stripped away by bad decisions, mismanagement, and terrible scheduling. The only way to tell that Halo Infinite has been out about 5 months is by looking at the increasingly silly, out-of-place cosmetics in the multiplayer. This game is essentially a slightly more technically polished version of the tech test we were playing last summer. Yikes. All of this is to say, this whole tangent is to say that 343 has not proven that they know what they're doing with Halo, and that they simply weren't ready for the live service responsibility that comes from releasing a free-to-play shooter that's low on content from the get-go. All of this gives the impression that Microsoft doesn't really seem to care about Halo's quality anymore either, but that's a whole other topic. I would love to give 343 extra props for the current state of the MCC, but it's hard when they didn't seem to learn any lessons from the MCC while working on Infinite. The MCC is currently the best place to go for any type of Halo experience, and it's not even close. To put it in perspective, if the MCC was never fixed, there would not be a definitive quality Halo experience on the market right now. So maybe some of you can start to understand where the patience went. I might have only been about 3 years older than a fetus when CE came out, but this series has been a part of my life since I was a kid. So go ahead and call me a hater. The MCC is one of the best products I own. I'm not a Halo hater. I'm not even a purist. I just wish that 343 was ready for the responsibility of releasing a Halo game. See you when I see you. Goodbye.
Where have you been? Been searching all along. Your place is dwelling on and on. Without a clue, without a sign, without grasping yet. The real question to be asked, where have I been? I'm a shapeshifter at this masquerade, hiding both face and mind, or free for you to draw. I'm a shapeshifter, what a shit to be. Please don't take off my mask, revealing dark. Moments of calm, not Infinite to be found.